I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And you are watching the NWCA podcast, the podcast that doesn't just talk wrestling history, we show history. That's what we're all about. Wes, you're pointing to me, brother. What's going on?
We do. We show history. We this is our gimmick, right? This is our gimmick. This is our thing. We're just two guys who love wrestling history, but we're lucky enough that we have a pretty interesting collection that we can show stuff. And I think it's a great idea, whether it's novel or new or old or whatever it is. You know, it's us, and it's what the NWCA is, and we're building a brand, man, and we're going forward all the time. And we are doing so hard, trying so hard, should say, to get one out every week to all our viewers.
Yeah, and we're staying consistent, and which is great. Our subscribers are up. Our numbers in our group are fantastic. Almost 3,000 members between three groups.
It's unbelievable to see the love that's being shared with this professional wrestling history. I shudder to think that who was doing this before? Nobody. I mean, there was stuff out there like the KFEB Memories Board, which is awesome. Different kind of podcast.
Spit it out, boy.
Yeah, done. Choked on something there. I didn't want to spew into the camera.
Holy. Anyways,
it's cold here and we're hot, but we're hot.
Yeah, because you're in Winterpeg, and I showed John the photo. He's like, "Why do you guys call it Winterpeg?" I show him the photo of you trying to get to your compost thing. He's like, "Bro, that's up to his belly button." I said, "Yeah, and Wes is like 6'2". I'm like, so he's taller than both of us.
Wes is not 6'2".
I know, but still funny to say.
So this summer, you're more than welcome to come out and visit Chateau de West, and we'll have some fun, and we'll drink some beers. Well, I'll drink some beers, and then we can look at our collections. But anyways, Let's talk about the matter at hand.
Yeah. Before we get into today's episode, a couple house cleaning things that we want to do. If you requested a booklet, book one, from us over social media, all of those have been mailed out. We're just waiting to print off more before we do round 2 of sending them out. Yep. And I will have more ready for ACW and hopefully March 26th at Destiny if things go to plan. If not, I will have more April 10th.
Yep, and I'm going to have some for a show coming up April 1st in Winnipeg, hopefully. We're just connecting with the promoter there. So booklet number 1 is gone out. I got a bunch to send out on Monday. And everyone is probably really going to flip out when they see it. You did a fantastic job of putting everything in line, and it's a great way to show people what we love.
Yeah, and what we are all about, which is sharing this history. Another thing I wanted to bring up is thank you to Adam and the Schwa Wars team for having me out for WrestleMania trivia.
Okay.
Wes, I didn't let you down, man. I didn't let you down.
Good.
I didn't know some of the new stuff, but I knew all the old stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Cool.
Yeah.
You.
Look at this. We're still on the road to WrestleMania, so I busted out WrestleMania 4. Come on, man. The tournament. Macho Man versus $1 Million Man.
Oh, I thought it was Hercules Hernandez versus Tuxedo Lex.
Tuxedo Lex. Yeah. This guy kills me. We want to remind oh, buddy, you are something else. I'm going to give you the Lex Luger torture.
Hello, Wes. Hello? What? Wes, come in.
Oh, my God. Wes isn't home tonight. We want to remind everybody that the NWCA podcast is sponsored by Grand River Tea. Grand River Tea is a Canadian company by a Canadian woman entrepreneur that provides premium loose leaf teas. Now the listeners of our show can save 10% off their final purchases. You, the listeners, just have to use the code NWCA at checkout. You can save on herbal and fruit teas, organic teas, black teas, and many others. Head over to grandrivertea.ca, search their wide variety of premium loose leaf teas. Use our code NWCA at checkout. Save money while staying healthy, and definitely in Winnipeg. stay warm while
Stay
staying
warm. That's
healthy.
it.
Wes, man, today we have, well, we wanted to do some, we're going to do WrestleMania. Like we did WrestleMania 1, we did WrestleMania 3.
Yep.
We have one more on the docket to go, but we wanted to stop and talk about one of, if not the greatest Canadian athlete. One of your favorite guys of all time. I always say it too. Ontario has Whipper Watson. You know, Alberta had Stu Hart. Quebec had Yvon Robert.
Ooh, not too bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see, like that, eh?
Good practice.
And then British Columbia had Gene Kaniski, man, and
Yep.
that's one of your favorites of all time.
It is. It's one of those things where it's a childhood memory, if you want to call it that. And me and Gene was every on TV every weekend in Ontario when we were growing up. We'll talk about that in a bit, but just when we in our Whipper Watson podcast that we talked about in our other history podcast, we did bring up the correlation between these two guys. Yes, there are kind of different eras because Watson was a lot before Kiniski even started. He was wrestling, but they intermingled and they wrestled. What did we say? Over 250 times.
Yeah, I have it all for later. We're gonna get into that big rival later.
And it's just massive rivalry. Like let's say Guy Lafleur in hockey, maybe Davy Keon in Toronto Maple Leafs for the older guys.
Yeah.
Definitely Yvon Robert, Whipper Watson, Stu Hart because of his legacy, obviously, and Gene Kaniski just because the guy was he was a fantastic champion.
Yeah, it's funny too. They call him Big Thunder and like Giant Gene Kaniski. You know, he was 6'4" and 230 pounds. So for modern fans, he's the size of like a John Moxley or an Edge. But then when Kaniski got in his prime, he got up to 270.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at guys for modern fans who are like, well, what's that? You're looking at like The Rock or Chris Masters, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, he 270 was pretty big in his heyday. Just and not one of those guys that was built. He had not much muscle tone, not much physique at all. He wasn't chunky, but he was just not muscular. But man, could he go a workhorse in the ring? And these guys, some of these National Wrestling Alliance heavyweight champions don't get the belt because they're just pretty, or they can talk, or like Ric Flair, or any of the guys from the 70s or the 80s that held belt. They had to be able to go into town and work. They had to be legitimate. They had to be able to look after themselves, and especially back then, they had to protect the business, right? So
exactly,
Kaniski could protect the business.
Yeah. Wes, with Kiniski being everywhere, literally everywhere, and we're gonna get into that. I mean, it would take us forever to cover his whole career. So hopefully we do a good enough job just to briefly maybe touch on certain things. But there's got to be a way that you saw all this, because with Kaniski being everywhere on TV, there's no way that Ontario got all this like all the time.
No,
so,
and we weren't privy to St. Louis TV or anything like that, but we got the British Columbia television right through the 70s in Ontario, and that's where my personal love of Gene Kaniski came. He was on TV just about every week. We didn't know at the time. I was just a kid, but he had owned part of the promotion. So one of the funny things was, yes, he was great on interviews, and we know that his style of but like Angela Mosca, really good self-promoter, Never had a problem getting in the newspaper, on TV, in the news, anywhere, right? But these guys, they could just bring you in, they could suck you in, and I was mesmerized in TV listening to him do his interviews. But in the ring, he wasn't the regular guy, because he didn't have muscles, and he had a really ugly face with that brush cut that was so different back then. He was old school because obviously he started in the 50s, right? But yeah, he was in your face all the time, whether he was a good guy or bad guy. He switched a lot. So, it wasn't like he was just always a fan favorite. he we were lucky enough in Southern Ontario, as I said, to watch the British Columbia TV feed, and they taped in Vancouver every Tuesday night, I think it was, and sometimes you could see the camera angle showed the lights outside of the TV studio of the cars turning in front of the building. You could see that because they had just had some bleachers set up behind the ring. Longtime fans will remember this lady fan who was always at ringside. I think her name was Jessie, which is kind of cool. And she had curly hair, and she'd get up every once in a while and she'd hit the ring and that, you know, like with her cane.
Like a Ma Pickles?
Yeah, like a Ma Pickles kind of person, right?
Yeah.
And Kaniski, you could see him sometimes if she went kind of out of the script, you could see him going like this, right? Because they're laughing, you know. It's that funny thing on TV that doesn't happen often, but it happens once in a while.
That's so funny, man.
But the announcer for the All-Star Wrestling, which was the name of the show in British Columbia, his name was Ron Morier, and he was a grandfatherly type, older kind of gentleman, ridiculously professional. And him and Gene just hit it off. They were such a great team to banter back and forth on the interviews. And it's something I'll never, ever forget my whole life. This guy, everyone's grandfather, and then big, ugly Gene Kaniski shooting his mouth off what he's going to do to his opponent this week or that week. And every once in a while, they'd pull up a picture on, and you know, next week on All-Star Wrestling, John Tolos is coming in, and he's coming in from California. He's the Pacific Coast Heavyweight Champion. He'll probably be challenging for the BC title or whatever. and Gene Kaniski, being part of the promotion, he'd always say something too. Well, you know, let me see that picture. If he was like, let me see that picture. This guy's no good. He can't do nothing. He's just coming here and he's going to get beat down like everybody else, blah, 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 right? So there was always interaction there.
That's so funny. I guess his career really took off when he won the NWA championship. Although he had a really good run in Toronto, which we're going to get into, but like once he won the title, I mean, he held it forever.
Yeah, he held it for 66 to 69. Come on. I have the stats here written down, but I'm going to have to let you talk a little bit or show something because I've completely lost my place there.
Well, when he won the title, right?
Yes.
I have a clipping here of just something of him defending the title. Now he defended the title against everybody, but here's a clipping from St. Louis.
Oh, against Carpentier. Awesome.
There you go. Edward Carpentier.
Carpentier.
Yeah, Carpenter. I always say.
Yeah.
Carpenter.
Yep, Carpenter. You got it.
But like, even still, so that's June 16th of 67, right?
Yeah.
And so look at this Canadian boy here too. 68. He's got a title match against Ernie Ladd in Toronto. Now I got another picture on this side, little article here. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah, right. But it just proves, like, with the nickname too. He got the nickname Canada's Greatest Athlete, and I read up on this that it came from a 1950s like announcer because of the references from the CFL of him being a football player and then wrestling, right? So he was everywhere. He was playing football and then he was wrestling worldwide. So he was Canada's Greatest Athlete.
Yeah, and it's what a tag to put on yourself, right? He always wore a beautiful blue jacket, either with Canada across it, or at one time he had with maple leaves on it. And we're going to show fantastic pictures. And some people might have seen these already, but we're going to show a ton of pictures of him wearing that pullover that he wore into the ring, and he just used to lift up one corner of it to show the belt when he was holding the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Championship. So arrogant. Yeah, so arrogant. Obviously playing the heel in those parts, right? But
yeah, you want to talk about how arrogant and how heel he is, Wes? Here's something I found through my collection from 61. Kaniski knifed by a spectator after grappling title match.
Wow. And that's in Calgary?
Yeah, so hold on, I'll read. It's from a Calgary paper, but it could be from BC. So, wrestling bad man Gene Kaniski was stabbed in the side by a knife welding spectator as he was preparing to leave the ring following his British Empire Championship bout with Whipper Billy Watson at Gardem Auditorium here Monday night. So there you go.
Yeah.
We'll get into that rival later. Kaniski was jolted by a crowd of fans who invaded the ring after the bout, and an unidentified person drove a knife into Kaniski's side in the melee. Blood poured from the wrestling's wound, and he was rushed to Vancouver General Hospital to have it stitched.
Wow.
So, talk about heat, brother.
Yeah.
Holy.
The comparison between Watson holding the title and Kaniski holding the title was like two different apples altogether. Because like as we said about Watson before, some places he might have had to be a subtle heel, bit of a tweener. Most places Kaniski went, he was nothing except a badass, right? But he had to put people in the seats. He had to put the guys over, but keep the title. Watson held the NWA title for, I think, we've got it down here as 200 and something, 317 days total, which that's just about a year. He held two reigns, and 317 days. Kiniski held the title for Canada's greatest athlete. So yeah, what's the difference? 1,220 days. Big difference.
Exactly.
And that was in a row. That was every night, traveling the world, defending that title. Japan, Hawaii, all over North America. I mean, every year he would have went to Calgary for the Stampede. He would have been back to Vancouver to his home territory. Obviously, Toronto, he was here once, maybe every 2 months. But not that, like you said, he was either one of these guys who was either holding a belt and defending it, or he was challenging. Because I mean, in the WWF in the early '60s, he held the tag team championship with Johnny Valentine. He held a massive title in California in the early '50s with this guy here, Lord James Blears, who ended up being a promoter in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And wherever he went, titles followed. Let's put it that way, right?
He tagged with Bulldog Bob Brown too.
I was just going to say, you've got a picture of Bulldog Brown there,
right there.
Another Canadian guy who was ridiculously famous on BC TV. Brown had a tie with St. Louis and Kansas City territories, and so often they'd go back and forth. Brown would bring guys back to Vancouver, and when Brown and Kaniski held the tag team championships many times in British Columbia, and then if they were low on heels or they were low on faces, someone had to do a switch. So, excuse me, Brown and Kiniski definitely teamed and feuded all the time. They were off and on like running water. What? Go ahead.
No, I was just looking at the thing. I thought I heard. I had my daughter over this weekend, so I thought I heard her call for me, but she's upstairs probably. Sorry, folks. No, what I was gonna say is too. Even though this Canadian icon like survived and built a status for himself all around the world, certainly as you and I have spoken many times, he was put in the same category as like Whipper Watson, Stu Hart, Yvonne Robert. It's all in Greg's top Canadian books too. Like those four names are right near the beginning of the book. With the Whipper Watson, like they were equal in terms of both longevity of North American fame, like you were saying, and they were tied in together too. So much, even though like they both beat Luthez for the title.
Yeah,
if you think about it like that, like Whipper beat Luthez, ended a 6-year streak, and then another Canadian beat Luthez and started his own streak.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say that Kaniski was probably one of the last, in my estimation, old school wrestlers. Like Luthez was like right at the end of he wasn't at the end of his career, but he was at the end of his being qualified enough to hold the title belt in '66, and then from '66 to '69, Kaniski held it, and then I would consider Dory Funk Jr. beating Kaniski the kind of like the modern era.
Mm-hmm.
Guys come up, newer, younger guys. Briscoe
Yeah.
after that, a young Harley Race after that, and then Terry Funk, and obviously when Tommy Rich won the title, he was the youngest guy to win the title, right? And that was
Gene Kaniski was the highest paid wrestler in 1958.
wow.
He made $85,000 that year. So there you go, and just wrestling money. So just to put he was legit everywhere. Wes, I gotta ask you though, when Kiniski lost the title to Dory Funk Jr., I think we should kind of talk about that because there was a little political background to that, and how Dory Funk, or not Dory Funk, sorry, Gene Kiniski kind of had a falling out with Sam Munchnick because he wanted more money and they didn't want to get more money. And I read it on Slam somewhere too.
Okay.
And it said in here too, this little Gene Kiniski booklet I found here. It says all about it. Kiniski told Slam Wrestling about his blow up at the convention, right? So
there's obviously a problem, and
Kiniski moved to St. Louis. They're like this. Here it is. So I tell them the way they're treating me, effing me with the payoffs. I told them off, and they stopped using me. They were effing me on my back payoffs. I'm not that stupid. I know what's in the house, what I should be getting, and what their share is. All of a sudden, you wrestle, then you have to wait a month to get your check and all that. SHIT. So, and then it goes down a little further down the page. Like Funk Jr. here. Where is it here? He actually felt honored to get the title from him. And he felt like really honored to face that guy in the finals because Gene Kaniski was around forever and Dory Funk was Jr. was an up and coming guy, so to beat Gene.
Yep.
And sorry, I was going to just say you can also check in on our Fort Worth, Texas episode as that timeline with Gene Kaniski versus Johnny Valentine in Fort Worth, Texas. The winner got a shot against Dory Funk Jr.
Right.
And we did read saying, "Oh, he won by fluke, and I'm going to get my title back." We read straight from the program. So
we know that Dory Funk Sr. had a massive pull in the NWA, and sometimes, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm just surmising that if you're gonna piss off the main guy at the NWA, you're not going to hold the title very long. Although he did come back, Kiniski held the Missouri State title, which is the St. Louis basically title, regional title. He held that title in the '70s also. So it wasn't like he was washed up or anything. Put yourself in that position. 1,220 days of defending the world championship belt every night, basically doing TV. 3, 4, 5 times a week. Just what a workload and what a thing to have on your back, monkey to have on your back if you weren't cut out for it, right?
Yeah, buddy. I found out that in Arizona at one point in time he was making like $300 to $400 a week in just Arizona. So it's like,
when he started out,
yeah. I mean, my goodness,
like $300 a week in the '50s that's a lot of money. I mean, people were making 25, maybe $30 a week.
$85,000 he made in '58. So think of that money.
Yeah, that's huge in today's dollar.
Huge.
It's I don't know. It's got to be $300,000 or $400,000 in today's.
I don't know. We'll do a pop up after with Johnny and we'll figure it out.
Hey, that's an idea.
Yeah. What's it called? With Gene Kaniski, though, you just can't talk Gene Kaniski without Whipper Watson. Like you said, it goes on for years and years and years. To talk Whipper Watson versus Gene Kaniski, it's almost hard to explain to modern wrestling fans just how significant this really was for wrestling history, let alone Ontario wrestling history.
Oh,
So
Canadian wrestling history, because yeah, they wrestled in Regina, they wrestled in Calgary, they wrestled in Thunder Bay. I mean,
yeah,
the only place they probably never wrestled, excuse me, each other was probably in the province of Quebec, because I know they wrestled down east against each other.
yeah,
So the good versus evil of two Canadian stars, and everybody knew that they were Canadian. Everybody knew they were Canadian. They like, because Whipper doing his what he did and what they made him famous with his contributions to crippled children and everything, and Gene Kaniski just being the boisterous bastard that he was, right?
yeah, exactly. I mean, you're looking at like Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock.
Yeah,
You're looking at Hogan and Andre the Giant. You're Sting and Flair, Macho Man and Steamboat, Taker, Shawn Michaels. I'm like, but there's one thing that is different, and it's just lasted for decades. I'm like, even if you look at Canadian rivals, okay, so I just named off a whole bunch of rivals. So now let's name off some Canadian rivals.
yeah,
Okay, so if you look back in history, you'll see that history will treat us with Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper, Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn, Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho, the Vachon brothers versus the Rougeau brothers.
yeah.
Uh, right? But nothing will ever compare to how big Whipper Watson and Gene Kiniski were. While many of the legendary rivals that I mentioned lasted years, this one lasted decades.
Yeah.
Over the years, they had 250 matches against each other, starting with their first in 1956. In 1957, the Whipper Watson versus Gene Kaniski feud would treat fans a total of 90 times. 90 times they fought each other in 57. In 59, Kaniski and Whipper continued their feud, only having 41 matches. And obviously, this was the biggest draw in Toronto
Oh,
for
for
Frank
sure.
Tunney. I have some examples here of the Whipper Watson and feud. Like I said, here's just one from London.
Okay, London, Ontario. Yep.
Yeah, look at the referee there, Jersey Joe.
Walcott. Yep.
Yeah, they
Same.
did this same match in Toronto, and I have the clipping for that. We're going to show that. Here's a clipping here from my collection. We have Gene Kaniski and Gorgeous George versus Whipper Watson and Bobo Brazil.
Sell
Now,
out the gardens for sure.
buddy, April 3rd, 1959.
Yeah.
Here's the front there, all the results and everything done.
Awesome.
Now, Gene Kaniski and Gorgeous George, brother, you're talking a heat magnet, bro. Like, yeah, here's another one. October 29, 59. Kiniski and Don Lino Jonathan defeat the Canadian Open Tag Team Title champions Whipper. Oh, wrong side.
Great.
Whipper Watson and Yukon Eric.
Yeah. That's
There
from
we
the
go.
gardens also. Cool.
That's right. And then here's the big one, and you might want to talk about this one because it involved two big famous radio DJs.
Okay.
Whipper Watson and Bill Brady defeated Gene Kiniski and Al Baliska. Al
Okay.
Baliska.
Velisca. Yeah.
Yeah, they were DJs from CKUY, and then right after that match, they had the British Empire title match, where this came from the Terry Dart collection,
Yeah.
where Kaniski won, but Sam Muchnick restarted the match, and Whipper won. So there you go. Just some examples of local stuff of their rival there too, because you you can't you can't talk Gene without Whipper, and I feel like you can't talk Whipper Watson without talking Gene Kaniski.
It still blows me away when we did the research on the Whipper Watson two-parter that we did on our other podcast, that 250 times in their career. And this is with traveling champions. This isn't with just the NWA, the same guys going around the circuit doing the same match around and around and around Cincinnati, Detroit, Greensboro, Charlotte, blah blah blah, like Sting and Flair, say from the '80s or whatever. These guys were crisscrossing countries to face each other. 250, 92 times in 1 year. God, come on.
Yeah,
Like,
buddy. There's 52 weeks in a year, so do the math.
yeah. That's
You know what I
incredible.
mean?
It's absolutely incredible.
More than once a week.
Yeah.
When Gene Kiniski wasn't rivaling though with Whipper Watson, he was, like you said, pretty big in the tag team division. Pretty famous tag teams too, right?
Yeah. Very famous tag teams.
I have a couple clippings here. September 3rd, 1959 in Toronto.
Yeah.
So this would be Kaniski and Hard Boiled Haggerty, one
Okay.
of his biggest tag teams. Even I think in the AWA, I want to say AWA, but I'm not too
Yep.
sure.
Yep. Definitely.
September 10th, 1959, Kaniski and Hard Boil are back, and they beat Yukon Eric and Timothy Geohagen.
Okay. Awesome.
So
Nice main event there too.
this one I found pretty interesting. Oh no! Dang it! This one it was 1963. Now this is kind of cool. Kaniski teams with Bruno Sammartino in Toronto
Huh. Oh, okay. That's strange
against Bulldog Brower and Johnny Valentine. So when you
oh,
read those names, not so strange now, but
that's some tag team there. Holy smokes, that must have been crazy. I
yeah,
can
dude.
imagine those four guys in the ring just
Oh yeah,
thumping on each other.
they lost. Kaniski and San Martino lost. Believe it or not. So
I have a clipping here. This is from Maple Leaf Gardens, of course. This is from the 70s,
yeah,
and this would have been Lord Layton, who was the TV announcer here in Toronto for a long, long, long time, in Detroit also, and Cleveland, and a bunch of other places. I think he just traveled around to the TV. But special referee Gene Kiniski, and usually when they brought in a wrestler to do special referee, we know what the next feud was: Gene Kaniski versus the Sheik. And I'm lucky enough to have just three pictures here, and these are just fantastic. I love these pictures. I didn't take these pictures, but I do own them, and that's an awesome picture of Kaniski ready to just hammer the Sheik over the head with the press table. And then obviously this picture is from before of him hammering the Sheik onto the press table. And then here's this picture blows me away. And if you guys, when you see this on the video, please stop it and check out Kaniski's eyes. He's looking right at the cameraman, and it's so awesome because he's fighting this bloody feud with the Sheik and the main event in Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens, and he's looking directly at the cameraman for this picture. And I'm just reading here on the back of this, it says photo by Rick Oberding. And I don't know who Rick Oberding is, but he took the picture. But I did pay for these, so I do own them.
here's something that you and I don't own, and I have permission to use this from the
Okay.
person who owns it.
Yep.
And he said that you and I are not allowed to post it anywhere but to use it for our video.
Okay.
So thank you to Mr. AC Calvert for
Yep.
sending me this picture of Whipper Watson versus Gene Kiniski.
Oh, nice. And
Now we don't own this, and
Yep.
it's copyrighted and everything from Maple
Nice.
Leaf Wrestling blogspot.com. But yeah, and he sent me a couple other things too. So here's another thing about Whipper and stuff. We're gonna edit all this into the show.
Oh, that's a nice clipping. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
old. Holy smokes. Nice one.
right?
Yep.
He sent us a bunch of stuff. He got hooked up. Um, but yeah, I mean, he was everywhere. Do you think Gene Kaniski had a bigger rival in Ontario than Whipper Watson, or worldwide than Whipper
No,
Watson?
never. Nobody touch him. Maybe worldwide Luthez, because I'm sure they wrestled many, many, many times. But
Mm-hmm.
he was, again, back in the day, you got to remember, this is 1966 to 1969. These guys were chop, chop, chop. Atlanta, California, Hawaii, back to BC, back to Ontario, back down to Charlotte, to Florida, back down to Hamilton, like Hamilton, fitting in spot shows, even little places, and doing TV. So yeah, I'm sure Thez, if we could look it up, Thez and Kaniski probably wrestled quite a few, nowhere near as many times as Watson. Without a doubt, probably the most, other than the Maple Leafs and the Montreal Canadiens, the biggest feud in Canadian sports history, without a doubt. Without
Really?
sure, for the time frame. I mean, nowadays, yeah, no one, unless you like wrestling history, knows who these people are. But for the time frame, Nobody, and that's a long time frame. These guys were working against each other from mid 50s, late 50s, right through to the late 60s, right? So yeah.
Um, I read too that when he bought into the All Star Wrestling in Vancouver, that he slowed down and that his sons wrestled. Now you might want to talk about this because his sons wrestled for the Bearman at least once or twice, correct?
They did not. No,
No, I thought they definitely did.
no, they didn't. They were both university. I remember reading somewhere that he said his sons weren't going to get into wrestling unless they had university degrees. So they both had
Oh,
university degrees. They both wrestled in university. They both were ended up to be big boys. Nick Kaniski and
Kelly Kiniski.
Kelly Kaniski. Right, good one. You pulled that one right out of the hat, man.
You like
And
that, eh?
yeah, they
Kobe.
one for Jesse as they go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one on the board.
they uh, they were good wrestlers. They didn't have the pizzazz or the size as their dad did. But like you said, that we've read. I think it was a Slam site where he was a single dad looking after his kids. He slowed down. He
Yeah,
wanted
that's where I
he
saw it.
wanted, he wanted to push them to get into professional wrestling. There's an awesome. There is a match on YouTube from BC with Ron Morier and Gene Kiniski and Kelly. Kelly's first match on TV, which is it's interesting to see for sure. You know what I did see though? I was looking up Gene Kiniski on YouTube, and I saw a black and white match from Stampede Wrestling, and it was good. It was good enough match, but the thing that caught my eye was Kaniski did this fantastic leg takedown. I think I've only seen it like 10 times in my life, and I
Mhm.
haven't seen it for forever. Like I haven't seen it for 40 years in the ring. Beautiful move. I think it was like Mr. Hito or something from Stampede. So if you want, check that out because it that move signifies a guy who could not only fight, who could not only talk, but he could wrestle. I mean, you're doing a beautiful backward. It was like a backwards leg takedown. Like, come on, that's old school wrestling personified.
Yeah, yeah. And like he was huge too because even though like after Whipper's accident in 71, Kaniski still continued to wrestle,
A lot.
but they still played that rival
Yeah.
because when the Sheik era was over and Tunney brought in the Canadian heavyweight championship and they did the tournament, Dino Bravo faced Gene Kaniski in the finals.
Yes.
And who was their front row? Whipper Watson,
Yeah.
right? So it even showed, and obviously, if you've read the book Canadian Heavyweight Championship by AC, it's a fantastic book. But you'll know that Kaniski lost that night, and Whipper Watson was there to give the belt to Dino Bravo.
And I have a couple pictures, excuse me, that I posted on our Facebook pages and also in my old bulletin, Toronto Wrestling History, of Whipper and Kaniski standing at ring from the 50s and then from that night when they presented the belt, the first Canadian heavyweight, well, after Dewey, but yeah, it was. And Kaniski wrestled in Toronto right up to the early 80s. He was pushing his sons, so he was bringing them in. Uh, I
Yeah.
saw I saw him once at Maple Leaf Gardens. I think it was against Mosca. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't find the picture. It's a very, very terrible picture. I mean, I know it's Gene Kaniski, and you can sort of see the jacket, but I'll find it before we
Yeah.
publish this, and then we'll put that up also. Um, I was really excited to see Gene Kaniski live, and he just stomped and kicked and did not that much actually.
Yeah. When
Getting
I well,
getting on in years though, for
yeah,
sure.
uh when we were talking about finding things for research, I have these things about St. Louis,
Okay, yeah.
right? So these are like the original St. Louis fan club Fansies. And if you notice, Kiniski's right on the front, man.
Yeah, right there.
And when you flip open the book, it shows the race versus Kiniski. And a beautiful photo there too, right?
Oh, nice. Yes. I've also done some digging in my magazine stash, and we'll have a ton of pictures from magazines from back in the late 60s, early 70s to put up after this show also. And you'll see Kaniski in various parts of his career against Harley Race, and making the front cover of some of the magazines from back in the day also.
Yeah, you want to talk about front cover? Here's a picture. Kiniski's on the front again. Can you find him?
Yep. Like
Now look at.
he was not.
Now wait. Boom! As soon as you open it, look at that.
Better. Look at that. Awesome. I thought he was great. He was, and he was funny. He was funny in a kind of. I'm sure he was probably a really funny guy. I've seen pictures of him smoking cigars, and I think everybody smoked cigars back then.
Back then, I used to do it in
I don't
college
know.
too.
I don't know why everyone didn't die of cancer, but gosh.
It says here too. So this is from November 1979. This St. Louis fanzine. As soon as you open it up, it says club ratings for this issue are as follows: world champion Harley Race, Missouri champion Kevin Von Erich, and then the rankings. Number 1, Gene Kaniski.
Awesome. Yep.
So you know what I mean? It just goes to show you. And you talk about him being everywhere on fansies. Here's a TNT issue of Gene Kaniski on the cover.
Nice early picture of him. Yeah.
Yeah. As listen, there we could again we try to just talk briefly about the career of Gene Kaniski. We could go on hours upon hours.
Yes.
There's a book out, you said.
Yes, there's
but
a
it's
book.
out of print and hard to find.
It's hard to find. I had a chance to order one when it came out. I just never did. Didn't get around to it. So unfortunately, it's supposed to be a fantastic book. I think it's by a Canadian guy.
Yeah.
His name's Steve something or other. But it's these icons. One of the things that we do, and I like to do anyways, and I know you're following suit for sure, is that we're keeping history alive. We're keeping some of these memories alive too. And that's why I wanted to do something a little different today about keeping some of my memories alive about what I remember from my youth watching TV wrestling when I was 10 to 15 or 16 years old. Such an important part of my life. Wrestling was just everything back when I was that age. Everything. My whole life evolved around wrestling and hockey. It was wrestling, 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 wrestling.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember going to the store one day at lunchtime. We weren't supposed to leave the school property, and I had some extra money. I bought a wrestling magazine. I remember sitting in class with a workbook with my wrestling magazine inside it, flipping pages, reading. Of course, I wasn't paying attention. Teacher come up, grabbed the wrestling book. Who's this? And I felt so embarrassed, right? Because I was a closet wrestling fan, other than with my close friends back in that day, it was grade 6 or 7 or whatever, right? And just fantastic memories. And this is one of the reasons why we want to do this, to keep the memories alive, to keep the history alive, and to share everything with people, because it's just so important. And that's why we have our 3 Facebook pages, right? National Wrestling Clippings Alliance, excuse me, Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, and the Tribute to the Wildman page, because we have to share. We have to share. We have to help people remember what wrestling history is all about, not just what happened last week.
Exactly. As we start to wrap up this Kaniski episode here, I want to say that one of my favorite Kaniski moments that I know of is that he was a special guest referee for the famous steel cage match between Ric Flair and Harley Race when Ric Flair won the title. So again, it shows like how significant this Canadian athlete was in pro wrestling as you continue to just keep your name in the game. Like special guest referee, you're used to put new talent over. I mean, it's fantastic, man.
Mm-hmm. That was like Starcades, I think, right?
What's that?
That was one of the Starcades.
Yeah, Starcade 83.
Yeah, cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
So there you go, right? So there's another cool fact about Kaniski. If you had to name Kaniski's top 3 rivals, who would they be?
They
of
would
all time. Of all time.
definitely be Watson.
Yep.
Luthez, and I'm going to say Dory Funk Jr.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
The third one, I just threw out there.
Yeah.
The first 2 for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Although, you
No
know
problem.
what, truthfully, looking at research, I don't really think I've ever seen too many ads for Fez and Kaniski. Now maybe they're just so far deep, or maybe they're in places where we just can't get the internet newspaper sites for those areas. But yeah, I definitely would say Watson because we know about it, and then Lou Thez because he beat Thez for the championship.
Yeah. Well, any favorite matches that people should check out? If I think does ACE and Maple Leaf Wrestling have any footage of Kiniski or anything on their
I,
videos?
I'm not sure if he has any Kiniski or not, but I do recommend people watch that match from Stampede. It was the leg takedown was spectacular. Nothing
And his
fancy, but just a wrestling hold, a real wrestling hold.
and his promos. You always tell me to
Yeah.
Google his promos.
The promos were awesome, and yes, that match with Kelly Kiniski, where Gene and Ron Morier do their typical promo.
It's weird that he never worked with Kiniski Gene. I guess he was too big of a star, right? These guys just get too big and they don't want to work for the Bearman.
But yeah, they were just not here at the time. They were starting in the early '80s. Dave was fighting his own fights at the time,
What
right?
about Gene though? Gene could have.
He could have, but he didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think Gene would have. I know they crossed paths for sure. They were wrestling in the same areas across Canada in the '60s, in Calgary and the Stampedes areas when Dave had Terrible Ted. But yeah,
Yeah.
they crossed paths, and I have put a picture on. I think all three of our sites with Terrible Ted and Gene Kaniski in a picture that was
Yeah.
used for promo in Calgary. But yeah, they would have crossed paths for sure. But Kaniski was too big, way too big.
If you had to travel back in time, I'm gonna answer this too. And pick a Kaniski match for a championship or whatever
Mm-hmm.
in a city, what Kaniski match are you watching in what city?
I don't know any other matches other than the matches where we know he won and lost the world heavyweight title.
I'm just saying fantasy, anything.
For sure, it would be him beating Fez.
Yeah, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Like Lou Thez is legendary as his legacy goes on, and he's gone for another year, and people forget even more and more and more. The guy wrestled for like 40 years. I mean,
Yeah.
he went from oldest of old school to practically the modern age. And Kaniski beat him for the belt. Not many guys beat Lou Thez for the belt.
I'm
Because
going to Maple Leaf Gardens, bro. Not gonna lie. And seeing Kaniski versus Whipper in Toronto. I think that building would have been off the hook.
yeah, for
Probably
sure.
17,000 people.
That would have
Just
been an awesome. I can just see now sitting in a ringside seat or just a little bit up from the ringsides, watching Kaniski knee drop him because that was one of his things he would do off the ropes. Not
really, eh?
the ropes, but holding onto the ropes and just knee dropping, pummeling Watson down to like nothing, and the fans going berserk. Yeah, for sure.
That's so funny, dude.
Yeah,
Is he the greatest Canadian heel pro wrestler of all time?
yeah, yeah. Well, you got that chubby guy from Windsor who's pretty big. So I don't know.
Who the hell are you talking about?
Abdullah the Butcher.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
like chubby guy from Windsor, bro. Like,
The chubby guy from Windsor. No,
guy that cut your head weeks ago.
yeah, Abdullah was obviously pretty big. He was a big deal.
Yeah,
But just not Abdullah never won any world titles. He owned regional belts, but he was also he just got burnt out. Everyone didn't want to see him get bleed all over the place every single match, right? And he moved on to the next territory where Kiniski held that belt for like 1,220 days,
yeah.
which is a big deal. Plus, he was AWA champion. He was WWA champion. He was NWA tag team title champions in Texas, in California, in Toronto, Ontario, in Buffalo. The guy was huge. Him and Chris Von Erich were tag team. He tag teamed in WWF. He tag teamed in Stampede. He was everywhere. Certainly a top all time guy. And like you said, with Greg's books, proves it right
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Okay, buddy.
I know.
I guess that's it. Thank you everybody who has watched any of our episodes. Subscribe to the channel. I want to remind everybody you can find us on Facebook. If you watch our videos, this is kind of cool. You can find us at official NWCA1, and that's where it comes sliding down from the corner into the middle and pops up, a little cool effect that we do. We also are on Facebook, like Wes said earlier. Uh-oh.
No, that's okay. Carry on.
What was that? What are you showing?
No, that was just go on, carry on. That's just the Sheik one.
Carry on my wayward son.
Carry on.
Like, carry on. Move forward. The Facebook groups: National Wrestling Clipping Alliance, Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, and the Wildman tribute page. We want to thank Grand River Tea sticking with us and sponsoring the show.
Johnny G.
Yeah, Johnny G. Buddy's coming through. Johnny G and I will be at ACW. Watch out. And we're going to be at Destiny. We're coming. So the crew will be in the building. Next week, we kind of have, should we announce what we're doing next week?
It's going to be special, and we're hoping for a special guest. Yeah. So let's just keep it at that.
That's right. We have a special guest hopefully planned for the next release. If not, after the special guest, we're going back to WrestleMania.
Yes.
WrestleMania 18 in Toronto, 20-year anniversary.
Yeah,
20 years ago.
It's going to be fun. And maybe I'll even know some of the guys that were on the card.
Yeah, 20 years ago. You know where I was? Grade 8. Where were you?
I was somewhere.
In Cambridge.
Yeah.
Ontario.
Working away like a dog.
You didn't watch wrestling in 2002, did you?
No.
Oh, perfect. So it's going to be a great episode to go through. So hopefully we have that special guest. We have Mania in Toronto 20-year anniversary coming up. The history episodes are not going to stop.
Crazy exciting. I got the list right here. If you can see the list, yeah, we're booked up right till the end of May.
Yeah. Like,
and we've got little slots in between where we're sticking stuff. So like we've got more episodes than we even have time to do.
Exactly.
Which is awesome. And it's just going to keep on rolling and rolling and rolling.
Yeah. So please, again, if you've ordered a booklet or asked for a booklet and you got it, share it on social media, tag us, let us know what you think. Yes. We're working on book 2. Share the podcast, subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you think of the show. If you have something that you want us to cover or a territory that you want us to touch, like we're open to pretty much covering anything. We'll go digging. Even your favorite wrestler.
Except for anything to do with Paul Jones or Lex Luger or yeah.
What's wrong with Paul Jones? None you know me alone.
That's Tom Jones.
Oh, whatever. It was some kind of Jones. Until next time, I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. And you just watched episode 7 of the NWCA podcast. Until next time,
ciao for
adios.
now.